The hum of the Xyler resonated through the observation deck, a low thrum that vibrated in Xylo's multifaceted eyes. He watched the human, designated crewman third-class Jenkins, with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. Jenkins was peculiar. Even for a human. He was currently attempting to repair a malfunctioning gravity compensator with what Xylo understood was a primitive tool called a wrench. The wrench slipped. Xylo's 3 hearts hammered against his carapace. He'd seen the schematics of the gravity compensator. He knew the volatile energy it contained. He knew what would happen if the wrench made contact with the exposed conduit. Jenkins swore, a string of guttural sounds that Xylo's translator identified as mildly frustrated exclamations. Then, with a sickening crack, the wrench connected. A surge of violet energy arced from the compensator, engulfing Jenkins. Xylo recoiled, his mandibles clicking in alarm. He'd seen similar energy discharges incapacitate a grobner, a species known for their near-impenetrable hides. Jenkins was surely vaporized. The energy dissipated. Smoke curled from the compensator. Xylo cautiously approached, his optical sensors straining to pierce the haze. And then he saw him. Jenkins was still standing. His uniform was singed, his hair was smoking, and he was shaking his head? He looked down at his arm, where a thin, angry red line pulsed. "Ah, shucks," Jenkins muttered. "That smarts a bit." Xylo's translator struggled to keep up. "Smarts," it echoed. "A bit?" The energy discharge had been enough to power a small Xyler city for a cycle. "Jenkins," Xylo began, his voice a series of rapid clicks, "are you functional?" Jenkins glanced at Xylo, a slight grin spreading across his face. "Yeah, I'm good. Just a little zap. Got any of that, duct tape?" Duct tape. Xylo knew of this substance. It was a primitive adhesive humans used for everything, apparently. He signaled to a nearby medbot, which scurried off to retrieve the requested material. Xylo watched, utterly dumbfounded, as Jenkins applied the duct tape to his arm, effectively sealing the burn. He then proceeded to continue working on the gravity compensator. Xylo reported the incident to the ship's medical officer, Dr. Zorgan. Zorgan, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell, was initially skeptical. A human surviving a direct energy discharge of that magnitude, he pulsed. Impossible. Their cellular structure is far too fragile. Xylo showed Zorgan the sensor recordings. Zorgan's crystalline shell shifted and shimmered as he processed the data. "By the Great Nebula," he whispered. "The readings are consistent. The human's biosignatures remained stable throughout the event." Zorgan insisted on a full medical examination of Jenkins. He was brought to the medical bay, a sterile, humming chamber filled with advanced diagnostic equipment. Zorgan and his team of medbots ran every test imaginable: cellular scans, neurological probes, genetic sequencing. The results were disturbing. Jenkins's physiology was unlike anything Zorgan had ever encountered. His bones, though less dense than a Grobner's, possessed an incredible tensile strength. His muscles, while appearing relatively weak, could withstand forces that would tear apart the sinews of a florg, a species known for their brute strength. But the most astonishing discovery was his cellular regeneration. A small tissue sample was taken from the burn on Jenkins's arm. Under the microscope, Zorgan watched in disbelief as the damaged cells repaired themselves at an astonishing rate. "It's as if," Zorgan pulsed, "his body is constantly anticipating and correcting for trauma." The implications were staggering. Humans, it seemed, were not just resilient. They were horrifyingly durable. They could withstand injuries that would be instantly fatal to almost any other known species. Their bodies seemed to possess an almost preternatural ability to recover from damage. News of Jenkins's incident spread throughout the Xyler. The crew was a mixture of awe and fear. They had encountered many strange and wondrous species in their travels, but none like humans. Humans were not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most intelligent. But they were, without a doubt, the most stubbornly, inexplicably, annoyingly resilient. Xylo found himself observing Jenkins more closely. He watched him lift crates that should have required a team of Grobners. He watched him fall from a considerable height and land with a thud, only to get up and brush himself off. He watched him consume food that Xylo's translator identified as nutritionally questionable without any apparent ill effects. One day, Xylo approached Jenkins in the mess hall. Jenkins was eating something that looked suspiciously like processed algae and synthetic protein. "Jenkins," Xylo began, "I have been observing you." Jenkins looked up, a piece of algae dangling from his mouth. "Is that so?" he mumbled. "Your resilience," Xylo continued, "it is remarkable." How do you do it?" Jenkins shrugged. "Do what?" "I just heal fast, I guess." "But the energy discharge," Xylo pressed. "It should have disintegrated you." Jenkins chuckled. "Yeah, well, I've had worse." "Worse?" Xylo's mandibles clicked in disbelief. What could possibly be worse? Jenkins paused, a faraway look in his eyes. "Well, there was that time I fell into a vat of, never mind," he muttered, shaking his head. "Long story." Xylo stared at him, utterly bewildered. He realized that he would likely never understand the intricacies of human physiology. They were an enigma, a paradox. Fragile yet incredibly strong. Vulnerable yet nearly indestructible. The Xyler continued its journey through the galaxy, encountering new worlds and new species. But the humans, with their strange customs and their baffling resilience, remained the most perplexing and fascinating creatures they had ever encountered. They were the impossible survivors, a testament to the unpredictable nature of evolution. And Xylo, for one, was both terrified and utterly captivated. The observation post hummed with a low, rhythmic thrum, a sound barely perceptible to human ears but one that vibrated through the very structure of the station. Inside, the air was carefully regulated, a precise mixture of gases designed to mimic the atmospheric conditions of the visitor's home world. It was a far cry from the dense, nitrogen-rich air of Earth, but the observers, a race known as the KRYLL, were nothing if not meticulous in their preparations. They were here to study humanity, a species that had recently made its presence known on the galactic stage. Initial reports had been perplexing. Humans, it seemed, possessed a peculiar resilience, a tolerance for substances that would be lethal to most other species. It was a phenomenon that defied conventional biological understanding, a puzzle the KRYLL were determined to unravel. The first subject of their observation was a human male, designated Subject Alpha. He sat at a table, a plate of food before him that would have sent a Krillian physician into paroxysms of terror. The dish was a vibrant, almost luminous concoction, its aroma a complex blend of spices that stung the nostrils even through the observation booth's filtration system. Subject Alpha, however, seemed unfazed. He picked up a utensil, a crude implement by Krillian standards, and took a large bite. The Krillian observers watched, their multifaceted eyes wide with a mixture of fascination and horror, as the human chewed and swallowed. His digestive tract, one of the observers stammered, their voice a series of clicks and whistles, it should be dissolving. The capsaicin levels alone. Indeed, another observer responded, their voice a deeper, resonant hum. Our scans indicate that the chemical compounds in that food should be causing severe internal hemorrhaging, if not outright organ failure. Yet, Subject Alpha showed no signs of distress. On the contrary, he seemed to be enjoying his meal. He took another bite, then another, his expression one of contentment. He even reached for a glass of liquid, a dark, viscous substance that the Krillian database identified as a fermented beverage known as whiskey. "Alcohol," a third observer exclaimed, their voice rising in alarm. "He's consuming alcohol. That quantity should be enough to induce a coma, if not. Death," the first observer finished, their voice a low, mournful click. "It should be a lethal dose." But Subject Alpha merely took a sip of the whiskey, then another, his cheeks flushing slightly. He let out a contented sigh, then resumed his assault on the spicy food. The Krillian observers exchanged baffled glances. Their understanding of biology, their meticulously constructed models of physiology, were being challenged by this strange, resilient species. Humans, it seemed, were capable of withstanding levels of toxicity that should have been instantly fatal. Are they adapted to a toxic environment? One of the observers mused, their voice a low hum. Did their evolutionary path lead them to develop a resistance to poisons? It's possible, another observer responded. But the levels of toxicity they can tolerate, it's unprecedented. We have encountered species that have adapted to harsh environments, but nothing like this. The debate continued for several rotations, the Krillian observers struggling to reconcile their scientific understanding with the reality unfolding before them. They analyzed the data from their scans, reviewed their biological models, and consulted their vast database of xenobiological information. But nothing could explain the humans' remarkable resilience. As Subject Alpha finished his meal, he leaned back in his chair, a look of satisfaction on his face. He raised his glass of whiskey in a gesture that the Krillian observers interpreted as a toast. To resilience, one of the observers murmured, their voice filled with a newfound respect. The Krillian observers continued their study of humanity, their initial perplexity slowly giving way to a grudging admiration. Humans, they realized, were not merely survivors. They were thrivers, capable of not only enduring but even enjoying substances that would be deadly to others. It was a trait that made them both fascinating and formidable, a species that was destined to play a significant role in the galactic community. The Krillian observers knew that their work was just beginning. The mystery of human resilience remained, a puzzle they were determined to solve. But one thing was clear, humanity was a force to be reckoned with, a species that had defied their expectations and challenged their understanding of life itself. And as they continued their observations, the Krillian observers couldn't help but wonder what other surprises this remarkable species had in store.